So friends, things are happening. Things are heating up. Even Rudy Giuliani just met with Jack Smith's prosecutors, presumably to spill his guts in hopes of either avoiding being indicted or, far more likely, in hopes of getting the best plea offer he can get. Let's talk about that, because justice matters. Hey all, Glenn Kirshner here. So friends, based on some new reporting, it really does look like things are about to happen. Rudy Giuliani, one of Donald Trump's former lawyers, just sat with Special Counsel Jack Smith's prosecutors for an interview. Rudy Giuliani, who tried to help Donald Trump steal the 2020 election, Rudy Giuliani, whose law license was suspended because he made false statements trying to help Donald Trump steal the 2020 election. Rudy Giuliani, who was told by Georgia District Attorney Fani Willis that he is a target of her criminal investigation in Georgia, and we all know that indictments are about to drop in August in Georgia. Yes, Rudy Giuliani just decided to come in, sit down with the federal prosecutors, presumably spill his guts in hopes of either avoiding being indicted or, far more likely, trying to cut the best guilty plea deal with cooperation he can cut. Let's first look at some of the new reporting, and then let's talk about what it means. This from the New York Times. Headline: Giuliani sat for voluntary interview in January 6th investigation. And that article begins, Rudy Giuliani, who served as former President Donald Trump's personal lawyer, was interviewed last week by federal prosecutors investigating Mr. Trump's efforts to overturn the 2020 election, people familiar with the matter said. The voluntary interview, which took place under what is known as a Proffer agreement, was a significant development in the election interference investigation led by Jack Smith, the special counsel, and the latest indication that Mr. Smith and his team are actively seeking witnesses who might cooperate in the case. The session with Mr. Giuliani, the people familiar with it said, touched on some of the most important aspects of the special counsel's inquiry into the ways that Mr. Trump sought to maintain his grip on power after losing the election to Joe Biden. Quote, the appearance was entirely voluntary and conducted in a professional manner, said Ted Goodman, a political advisor to Mr. Giuliani. So we know the meeting happened because even a Giuliani mouthpiece confirmed it. The article continues. A proffer agreement is an understanding between prosecutors and people who are subjects of criminal investigations that can precede a formal cooperation deal. The subjects agree to provide useful information to the government, sometimes to tell their side of events, to stave off potential charges, or to avoid testifying under subpoena before a grand jury. In exchange, prosecutors agree not to use those statements against them in future criminal prosecutions unless it's determined they were lying. Prosecutors working for Mr. Smith asked Mr. Giuliani about a plan to create fake slates of pro-Trump electors in key swing states that were actually won by Mr. Biden. One person familiar with the matter said, speaking on the condition of anonymity to discuss an ongoing criminal investigation. They focused specifically on the role played in that effort by John Eastman, another lawyer who advised Mr. Trump about ways to stay in office after his defeat. Mr. Giuliani also discussed Sidney Powell, a lawyer who was briefly tied to Mr. Trump's campaign and who made baseless claims about a cabal of foreign actors hacking into voting machines to steal the election from Mr. Trump, the person said. So friends, these kind of meetings, what we refer to as a proffer session, I was involved with more proffer sessions as a career prosecutor than I could ever count. And often we will sit down with somebody, we'll give them a letter, it's called Queen for a Day letter. It gives them some protection. It lets them come in, talk about their own crimes, talk about the crimes of others about which they know, about which they can testify, and they can provide all of that information to the prosecutors, to the FBI agents, without any risk of that being used against them. It's kind of a temporary immunity for a day. And here's what I can tell you about these proffer sessions. Often, this is the last step before a person, in this case it would be Rudy Giuliani, before a person gets indicted, or before a person enters into a guilty plea and cooperation agreement. Now, not always, but it's often the last step, right before somebody is indicted or agrees to plead guilty with cooperation. So friends, it really does feel like an indictment of Rudy Giuliani and perhaps others may be imminent. And indeed, we just got some new reporting on that very topic. This from the Independent. Headline: prosecutors are prepared to hit Trump and his allies with new charges, sources say. And that article begins, the Department of Justice is prepared to seek indictments against multiple figures in former President Donald Trump's orbit and may yet bring additional charges against the ex-president in the coming weeks, the Independent has learned. According to sources familiar with the matter, the department has made preparations to bring what is known as a superseding indictment, a second set of charges against an already indicted defendant that could include more serious crimes against the ex-president and could do so in a number of different venues, in other words, different locations, different jurisdictions, like, I don't know, New Jersey, Washington, D.C. Could do so in a number of different venues, depending on how prosecutors feel the case they have brought against him in a Florida federal court is proceeding. Prosecutors are now prepared to stack an additional 30 to 45 charges on top of the 37-count indictment brought against Mr. Trump on 8 June. They would do so using evidence against the ex-president that has not yet been publicly acknowledged by the department, including other recordings prosecutors have obtained which reveal Mr. Trump making incriminating statements. Additionally, it is understood that Special Counsel Jack Smith's team is ready to bring charges against several of the attorneys who have worked for Mr. Trump, including those who aided the ex-president in his push to ignore the will of the voters and remain in the White House despite having lost the 2020 election. One of those figures is Mr. Trump's erstwhile personal attorney, former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani. Mr. Giuliani, whose law license was suspended in New York and Washington as a result of his allegedly making false representations while seeking to help Mr. Trump overturn his 2020 election loss to Joe Biden, reportedly participated in a voluntary interview with prosecutors working under the supervision of Mr. Smith, the Justice Department special counsel whose office brought charges against Mr. Trump earlier this month. Friends, Rudy knows the value of cooperating against the big criminal fish. In this case, the big orange blowfish. Rudy knows he's about to be indicted in Georgia. Rudy knows he's very likely about to be indicted federally. Rudy's law license has been suspended a couple of times over, and he is very likely soon to be permanently disbarred. Rudy Giuliani has got only one play left: to cooperate with the investigation and the prosecution of Donald J. Trump. Hold on tight, friends. Accountability may be just around the corner. And even justice, may be peeking up over the horizon. and justice matters. Friends, as always, please stay safe, please stay tuned, and I look forward to talking with you all again tomorrow.